Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So, a couple of weeks ago, I was invited to a friend's house for Friday night dinner. And that Friday night, the food arrived at the table, and shortly after the food, a relatively sort of unique pattern loaf of bread arrived at the table at the same time. And when I looked at the pattern on the loaf of bread, I recognized it as something called tiger bread. And I bought tiger bread at the local supermarket, a supermarket called Sainsbury's. But what was interesting in this situation is that when I looked over at the sideboard and I looked at the packaging, it was called giraffe bread. And I don't know about you, but I've never eaten giraffe bread before. It was a little strange. So what I discovered was that 9 months ago, there was a little 3.5-year-old girl called Lily Robinson. Lily was in a similar situation to me, and she was looking at the bread, and she saw the pattern and thought that it looked more like giraffes than it did like tigers. So as all 3.5-year-old girls do, Lily wrote a letter to the customer services team at Sainsbury's supermarkets and made a suggestion that they change the name of the loaf of bread. So the lovely guy at Sainsbury's actually responded to her note. He also said he thought it was a bit silly that it wasn't called giraffe bread, but that's what the baker called it, and he offered her £3 off her next voucher. Sorry, a £3 voucher off her next purchase even. It so happens that Lily's mum at the time posted this letter on her blog. A couple of months later, it started trending on Twitter. And then it started trending on a couple of other social networks. And then it ended up being in the headlines of some of the main news sites online. And credit to Sainsbury's, they listened to this massive swell of consumer reaction to something as bizarre as bread. And 6 weeks ago, Sainsbury's officially changed the name of tiger bread to giraffe bread, thanks to Lily Robinson. So this is a cute story, but why on earth am I sharing it with you guys today? For me, this example highlights the seismic shift that we're seeing in the way that businesses are engaging with their customers. At LinkedIn, it's what we call the socialization of business. It's rooted in the psychology of influence, and when you think about social media, it's providing businesses with new, unique ways to engage with their customer base, new, unique ways to build long-term, sustainable, and profitable relationships with their customers. But why do we even need to do this today? What's the point? So, people are seeing too many adverts. We've all become a little cynical, a little disillusioned. We're wary of the spin and the PR. And in essence, we're starting to tune out advertising. And let's be clear, the golden age of one-way push communication is well and truly over. It's gone. So the question now is, what do we do about it? How do we help regain the trust? How do we help convince consumers again that our products are right for them? So I want to talk to you about the psychology of influence. Simply put, this is about how do we change people's minds. That is ultimately what the psychology of influence is about. The examples that I'm going to take from in this section are from a book by a well-known psychologist called Robert Cialdini. So Robert Cialdini suggests that there's 6 different ways to influence people. The first way is reciprocation. So the first way to influence people is through reciprocity. Human beings are programmed to repay in kind what another person has provided for them. Just think about it. You might go to a bar, you might go to a pub, you buy someone a drink. Their immediate reaction is to offer you a drink in return when your drink is finished. You're going to buy someone a wedding present. You think back to what they purchased for you at your wedding and try and match it like for like. The second way to influence people engages their self-image and their public commitment. It's what psychologists call a commitment device. Think about when people join the army. They put their hand up and they publicly say, I'm committing to the army for a number of years. Think about an alcoholic, for example. First step, recognize you have a problem. Second step, put your hand up and make a commitment to joining the 12-step program. The third way to influence people is through what we call social proofs. Excuse me. So in essence, we do as we see others do. We do what we see other people like as well. So in this example, when people stand up on this stage today, when they finish presenting, it's highly likely that a couple of people may start clapping. I may be shooting myself in the foot here, but it's highly likely that a couple of people will start clapping. What you'll then see is, although those people might be clapping, other people in the audience may have had no interest in what that person was saying. They may have fundamentally disagreed with them as well, but it's highly likely that they'll start clapping at the same time. Fourth, we prefer to say yes to the requests of people that we know and people that we like. So if someone invites you to a Tupperware party, do you really want to go? Probably not is the answer, but you end up saying yes. This happens all the time in our everyday lives. Think about celebrity endorsements. If you like Britney Spears, and Britney Spears brings out a new perfume, if you have that original affinity with that celebrity, it's more than likely, or you're more likely than others, to go and purchase that product. The fifth is authority. So in general, there is a strong pressure in our society for compliance at the request of an authority figure. Think about a man in a white coat, as in the famous Milgram experiments. Whether it's a man in a white coat, or whether it's a man or woman, an impressive man or woman in a really great suit, to some degree, we are all subservient to authority. And finally, scarcity. Scarcity is a really, really great motivator. All of these, in fact, in this situation specifically, think about the launch of the iPhone 4S. Generally, when something's less available, we want it more. The iPhone 4S went on sale all around the globe. You have crazy queues all around the world of people queuing up, only because there were a limited number of these devices available at the time. So all of these forms of influence, these 6 forms of influence, have their place in the psychology of social media. And that explains why social is becoming such an incredibly powerful force today, and why ultimately we're seeing what we call the socialization of business. So let's quickly look at those 6 forms of influence and see how they map to social media. So the first one, reciprocation. In essence, you go onto a platform, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. It's a free platform. You're willing to accept that it's free because you receive advertising in return. The second one is commitment. You sign up for a social network. You pull all your friends, you pull your colleagues in. You put your hand up and you commit to joining it. And you commit to spending time, energy, and resources to discover what that platform offers for you. Thirdly, social proofs. Think about all the social actions, a like, a recommend, a share, a follow. What generally happens is when you do that, someone else in your network does exactly the same. There's an influence factor to you doing those actions. Authority. How many of you today follow a celebrity on Twitter? Quite a large number. Think about whether you follow a company page on LinkedIn, whether you follow a brand page on Facebook today. All of this is based around the concept of authority. And then finally, scarcity. Think about the early days of Google. So in the early days of Google, when they were launching Gmail, there were a limited number of keys which were available. And I remember everyone wanted one. Everyone was saying to the next person, did you get an invite to Gmail? I haven't quite got mine through yet. It's exactly the same with Pinterest recently. With Pinterest, everyone wants a piece of it, and everyone's hoping to get an invite from somebody they know. As I said, scarcity is a really, really key motivator. So what does this actually mean for business? What does this psychology of influence actually mean for your business today? A social experience means putting people first. It means organizing your business around people. You need to earn people's trust. And what this means is that you need to put the relationship ahead of the transaction. Relationships really, really matter today, more so than the transaction. Businesses are asking themselves, they're not asking themselves anymore when and how much, but they're asking themselves who, and they're asking themselves how engaged. But you can't build relationships by talking about yourself all the time. You have to listen, you have to react, and you have to interact. In many situations, conversations are already taking place about our products, about our brands, about our businesses somewhere online. And your role as a business is to find those people and to deliver them such incredibly compelling, relevant information that you actively get invited into that conversation. It's no longer one-way communication. It's about conversations, not about monologues. But you can't build relationships by talking about yourself all the time. You have to listen. You have to react. But this requires a new corporate culture that is responsive to feedback and ready to recognize the individuality of your specific customer. You need to talk in a language, in your customer's language, in a language that they understand, not about your issues in your language. The focus now is on your customer. All the time, they are more important. And a social business isn't just a top-down command and control organization. It opens the doors. It lets customers in. It lets customers participate in that specific brand. It doesn't rely exclusively on this sort of, as I said, this push communication, press releases, advertising. It's two-way communication. It's around having an interaction, having a dialogue, having a conversation with your customers. Sometimes the best advert, as we all know, is a really happy, loyal customer. Let your customers tell the story for you. It is infinitely more powerful. But, you know, this is a bit of a risk, and as with all change, it can be a bit scary sometimes. A senior financial marketer recently asked me, how can LinkedIn help them control their social media presence? Let's be clear, social media is not about control in any shape or form. You have to relinquish that control to your customer base. And finally, emotion is really good for business. In fact, emotion is great for business today. Emotional is the new rational. It makes rational sense to build an emotional connection with your customer base. If you can establish that emotional connection, research shows that you get faster buying decisions, you get a greater degree of loyalty, and generally when you screw up, people are slightly more forgiving. I think that for B2C brands, establishing that emotional connection, it's pretty well accepted. People have been doing it quite well for a number of years. I think for B2B brands, although they may accept that they need to build that emotional connection, it's become far more challenging for them. And I would argue that with the advent of social platforms, and specifically professional social platforms, it's provided an opportunity for B2B marketers to develop and establish that emotional connection with their customer base. So let's now take a look at a couple of real companies who are using social to great effect. And as I said, a happy, loyal customer telling your story is far more effective than you telling your story. So in this case, the HP marketing manager is going to talk briefly about their relationship and their partnership with LinkedIn. Can we play the video?
The challenge we were looking to solve is the perception of HP as a large IT manufacturer who is very good at supporting large corporates, to making sure that our small business customers understood that we could be their trusted advisor. The solution we arrived at was trying to make use of existing tools. So we had a business answers hub, which was full of information, white papers, testimonials, videos, but the content wasn't readily available to our customers, or they didn't know where to find it. We decided to set up a group within LinkedIn to act as a space where small businesses can communicate with us, we can have a dialogue, they can communicate with each other, and we could answer their questions while they feel that we're contributing to their business and helping with their business issues, rather than being spoken at or communicated at by HP. LinkedIn was chosen mainly because of its professional network. The people who are on LinkedIn are very receptive to receiving communications because of the professional nature of the environment. It's very much hooked into a lot of the other strategies we have surrounding social media, so Facebook, Twitter, but adds a much more professional angle to what we're trying to communicate to them. To encourage membership of the group, we've been including the LinkedIn group as our call to action on the majority of other activities we're undertaking. So whether that's above the line activities, whether that's on our Twitter, on our blogs, we use that as very much our call to action for people to join the conversation. To encourage people to participate in the group, we've undertaken a number of different activities. We've undertaken polls of the group to understand their feedback on certain topics. We post questions to the group, respond to questions that have been placed on the group, and we've also brought in a panel of experts now from different disciplines who are part of our SMB panel. So we've been really pleased with the results we've achieved. We've got nearly 5,500 members of our group now actively engaged. About 75% of those members are returning to the group and participating in the conversations that happen. We know that members are twice as likely to recommend HP as their preferred brand. And in addition, we know that the group has grown organically. So we know of many different examples of conversations taking place. We even know of people meeting up who met first through the forum and having a business conversation out of it.
So for me, this was a really great example of HP showing incredible innovation in the space, but also recognizing that they needed to have a conversation with their customers versus just pushing out a message to them. So next up is Philips. So Philips wanted to position themselves as thought leaders within the space of healthcare. I always actually used to think of Philips as a consumer electronics brand, but they have a massive healthcare division, and they make machines for the likes of cardiology, oncology, and radiology. So what we help them do is we help them pull together an online community of over 38,000 professionals within the healthcare field around the world. They wanted to engage in dialogue with them, reach out to decision makers and opinion leaders within the healthcare field. So as I said, 38,000 people, 4,400 discussions taking place. This is still continuing 18 months later. Still people are engaged. And I think most importantly for me within this community specifically was that there was a net promoter score, so a propensity to recommend of 50, which is practically unheard of when you look at other brands. So next up, and you'll have to excuse my atrocious pronunciation here, I think it's Webbdagarna, if I'm not mistaken. But most of you probably know, a Swedish organization specifically for managers. We worked with them to create a tool whereby they actually enabled their members or their potential members to pull out data from the LinkedIn platform to create their own movie about their career. That movie you could then distribute through your own social networks. For me, this was a great example of establishing an emotional connection with their customer base. I actually did this a few weeks ago, and I'm not going to show you the whole clip, but I'm going to show you a short clip of what my movie looked like when I used the tool that they had created.
It all began 17 years ago. Joshua Graff started a promising journey with an education at Woodhouse College. Joshua begins at We/I'm as associate producer. The year the Åsund Bridge opens for traffic. An exciting career continues as founder at Jam International Partners Incorporated. 3 years later, Joshua was duly engaged by Microsoft as business development manager. Since then, the wealth of experience has...
So this was just a short clip of the longer video, but I encourage you all to go on and see the type of movie that you can create about your own personal career, which you can then distribute through your own social networks. So lots of brands are getting this right. Trust me, there's quite a few making mistakes at the same time. And a lot of people are also taking a wait-and-see approach. But media consumption habits have changed so dramatically over the last couple of years, specifically with the advent of social. If you look at Europeans in general, 75% of Europeans are active on social media today. Over 2/3 of professionals in Sweden are on the LinkedIn platform today. You simply cannot afford to fall behind your consumers. But let's be honest, it's not always easy to do this. And in many situations, it requires a reorganization of your internal structure, from marketing to customer service, from PR to talent acquisition. Social media plays a key role across all of these functions. One caution is not to do social for social's sake. It's what a lot of people have been doing in the last couple of years. There's been this sort of gut reaction, this knee-jerk reaction. I need to get into social. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get into social. Plan it carefully. Be strategic about it. Most importantly, be in it for the long term. This is not a short-term fix. This is where your customers are, and you have to be in it for the long term. Understand the benefits for your specific business. And most importantly, use the right channel. Context really, really, really matters. 80% of our customers are telling us that they want to maintain two discrete ecosystems, one for personal and one for professional. As we say in the office, you don't want your Saturday night to meet your Monday morning. It can be a disaster zone. So social media is not a trend anymore. It's part of hundreds of millions of people's everyday lives. The numbers are simply too big to ignore, as you can see behind me. So in conclusion, I want to leave you with two pieces of advice today. First, embrace the socialization of your business. Don't treat it like an optional extra. It really, really is not an optional extra. Make it a permanent part of your company's operating system. Truly become a social business. And the second piece of advice is don't ignore letters from 3-year-old girls. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll supply you with a helicopter.
I get gifts as well. Thank you very much.
There you go. We are all, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts about social and social business. We are obviously well aware of LinkedIn as a platform. Is it too rude to say that it's a boring platform compared to Facebook where it's fun?
Is it too rude? So I would say again that sort of context matters. I mean, when you look at there was some recent research in the UK from YouGov, and it started talking about social media and people using social media for a specific purpose. And I sort of, I joked before that you don't want your Saturday night to meet your Monday morning, but you do want to maintain these two quite different lives, one for personal and one for professional.
But the fact that a lot of people are mixing those two worlds, you bring your work home and you take your private things to your daytime job and taking care of them, isn't that one of the new things in this new business where the barrier between what's work and what's not work is not as clear anymore?
There's a slight blurring of that barrier, but as I said, when we look at our members, over 80% of them want to maintain those two worlds. And when I think about the pictures that I post on Facebook today, there is no way in a million years that I would want them going anywhere near my LinkedIn profile. The concept of business associates, colleagues, my boss, my future boss, seeing that side of my life, I want them kept independent to one another.
Would you like your users to be more social on your platform?
I think our users are incredibly social on our platform. When I look at the way that they're engaging, when I look at the way that they're using groups, using company pages, they're posting, a lot of people combine their Twitter feed with their LinkedIn feed. Ultimately, our platform is a social platform. That's the reason that people are going there.
Do you see any differences around the world? Where would you rank Sweden in your perspective? Are we good at this, using your platform to be social, or is it even better in the United States?
So I think it's stronger in the US, but only because of time. So LinkedIn, founded by Reid Hoffman in 2003, it took us about a year to get 1 million members. Now we add about 2 a second. And I think specifically in Sweden, we're almost at that 1 million bracket today. And what happened is that when we localize the site, when we put local language, as always, we see a huge spike in usage. But as I said, over 2/3 of Swedes are on the platform, or professionals are on the platform, and we're seeing that number increase on a daily basis.
Okay, great. Any questions from Twitter, Katarina, Miriam?
Again, how many Swedes are on LinkedIn? That the question comes up again. I think you answered it, but
yeah, I mean, I can check later. I think the exact number is about 970 or 980,000, but it's 2/3 of professionals, and I know it's just under 1 million at the moment.
Okay.
Great, thanks. Any comments from you over here?
I've been accused for being too nice, so I have a little bit of a...
Keep it going, it's fine, thank you.
Yeah, a tough one for you. But, you know, doing what you do, talking about conversational marketing and all of that, and having a great platform, you and Facebook and Twitter, you still do push ads, and your local offices are all about pushing ads. There's not any sort of engagement going on in the local offices. I'm actually talking about Google too, about the pull marketing and conversational marketing. What's your thoughts on that?
I think when you look at how we've developed our sort of standard media offering over the last couple of years, when the platform first started, sort of I take on board what you said, and it was sort of relatively traditional display advertising. I think actually within a social context, there's huge benefits to that because of the rich analytics. You can know it's no longer just looking at a click-through rate, but you can then look at the function of people, the seniority of people. There's a huge amount of additional data. But when you look more recently, and I think about what we call the follow ecosystem, which is about how brands follow a company page, how they respond to posts which have been made, how they then share that, social ads encouraging people to either follow a company, recommend a product or service. If you look at the 38,000 people in the Philips group that we referenced before, there's over 4,400 discussions that have taken place. And I think more and more so, the more time you invest, the more you realize that these platforms are a way of having a conversation versus just push marketing.
Okay, and one from Therese as well.
Yeah, it can be argued that a business cannot be social. A business is a legal entity. What is social is the individuals that are employed in the company and the SVPs and the management. And I wonder if you have an example of a company that is truly social, rewarding the employees, letting them be the spokespeople of the company, poking each other in meetings, liking, working with feedback, really being social.
So I'm a little biased, but I'd probably say LinkedIn. So when I think about the sort of transparency that takes place within our culture at LinkedIn, there is full transparency from an entry-level stage to Jeff, who's our CEO. And for me, that's around sharing information, that's around engaging on social platforms. We use products like Ripple internally, which is a social sort of development platform. Everything that we do, social runs through our DNA. But when I think about larger companies, you saw a couple of examples before, it's challenging to become a truly social brand at the moment. People have had years of experience of working in that traditional manner. And I think sort of, credit to the brands who are sort of pushing themselves to really start to evolve their social offering. It will come over time, but we've still got quite a long way to go.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, guys, and thank you for coming. We're great to have you here, and well, thanks again, and I give him a big hand.
Thank you.